Hello everyone and welcome back to Prodigal Overland. My name's Brad. If you're new here, welcome. In today's video, we're going to be showing you guys at home how to stay safe out on the trail, how to have success out on the trail, how to potentially avoid damage out on the trail. And it all kind of relates to this term, this measure called momentum. So, if you want to avoid damage to your rig, if you want to know how not to roll over in your rig, if you want to be successful out on the trail when you get out off-roading, you're going to want to stick around and watch this video. All right, momentum. What is momentum? Well, in physics, momentum is a quantity of movement that's defined by mass times velocity. So how heavy something is, how fast it's moving, that times each other determines how much momentum an object actually has. Now, when we're talking about off-roading, you just want to think how fast your vehicle is moving, but it's also kind of important to keep in mind for this what you're driving and how heavy it is. So if you're off-roading in a platform like a WK2, then you have a rig that's between probably 6,000 to 7,000 pounds if it's fully loaded up. And you want to keep that in mind when you're out on the trails. Momentum is mass of an object times the velocity of an object. It determines kind of how much momentum you're carrying in. This is a very important thing to realize and understand when off-roading in certain situations. The first one I want to kind of throw up there is just what to do if you find yourself in a situation where you're in your rig and your rig is getting tippy, like you see me getting here. In this original video, I had mentioned that you want to turn your wheels actually towards the side that you're tipping towards. What that does is kind of widen your base of support. I had also originally said that you want to hit the brakes. Now, that can be a very bad idea if you've got any sort of significant momentum going into that obstacle. As you can see here, we're just kind of creeping along, and even so, when I tap the brakes, you'll see that really initiates kind of that seesaw-like motion. So if you're feeling out of control or you have a lot of momentum in a situation like this and you hit the brakes, you're effectively having someone kind of push you from behind, and that really can cause to a rollover situation. What I should have said is if you're maintaining control of the vehicle, if you've got negligible momentum, you can indeed, in certain situations, kind of tap that brake and back out of it if you need to. I know because we had done this actually several times out in Moab, and I've done it since then, but the big important factor is control. You need to have control of your vehicle. Recently, when we were out in Roush Creek, we kind of reviewed this with the folks that were out with us and intentionally put them in a situation where they felt like they were getting tippy. It's good to practice this in kind of really safe scenarios because your gut reaction when you feel your vehicle starting to tip is going to be slamming on the brakes and turning away from the tippiness. What I often do for others, and I do for myself when we're out on a new trail and I see a situation that looks off camber, I'll either remind the driver or myself that as we're going down, if I lose control and start to tip, that I need to lay off the brake and kind of go turn towards the side. And what that allows you to do is you will just roll down. Now, obviously, if you're on a cliff side or there's a very dangerous obstacle on that side, this can also cause problems. But as a general rule of thumb, if you're out of control in your vehicle, you want to turn towards the tippy side and let yourself roll down the obstacle. The thought being that if you take damage on the underside, that's better than actually rolling your vehicle. I think knowing how to control acceleration and how to know how much momentum to carry through a certain obstacle is definitely a learned skill. So there's a balance between too much momentum where you break something and not enough that you get stuck, as we did here in the mud. This is up in Michigan, and we weren't carrying enough momentum through the obstacle. I kind of let off, and we got ourselves good and stuck.
Okay, stop.
And I think it just comes down to practice. This was a climb out in Redbird, Indiana, where I was just kind of creeping up. We got to the top, and it had a very sharp breakover angle, and we're just sitting on our rock rails. And so had I had more momentum coming into that scenario, we would have been okay and able to kind of skid across and clear that. But again, I've just found this skill to take, it just takes time. You have to know your rig, you have to get to know different kinds of terrain, from rock to mud to sand, and know how much momentum you need to be carrying in at different settings and different areas.
I do see that dip.
He lost all his momentum right there.
And it's just as important to realize that too much momentum in certain situations can really wreck your rig. This again was out in Moab. These were some sand dunes we were playing around on and had way too much speed and momentum going across. And after that run you just saw, ended up kind of bending my brand new sump protection plate, which I wasn't too thrilled about. All right, guys, here's kind of an aftermath of sand mode. This is a brand new sump plate, transmission plate, or not transmission, the sump, the oil pan plate from Chief Products. It was kind of straightish down. When we came over one of the dunes, we came down pretty hard, and now it's got kind of a nice curve to it. When you're using more acceleration, when you're carrying more momentum through an obstacle, into an obstacle to get over it, you just need to know that with that extra momentum, you're placing your vehicle at higher stresses, and you're going to have more vertical movement from when you hit a bump or an obstacle. That's going to really kind of force your rig down and slam it down, as you just saw on the sand dunes. Out here we have Corey out at Roush Creek. He's bringing his rig up through, using quite a bit of momentum to kind of get over and through this obstacle. Somewhere this day out on this trail, he ended up really wrecking. He bent his front axle, his front differential needed to be replaced. So I don't know if you guys can see Corey's front driver, but he's got a big camber going on this side.
I thought it was intentional.
That was not there when we started today. So he's definitely out a bit over here as compared to here. We're nice and straight. And you also want to keep in mind that just because you've got protection on your vehicle doesn't mean that you're destruction proof. This was again out at Poison Spider. We had too much momentum going through an obstacle. We hit our lower front guard, and that ended up actually pushing the guard and really tweaking our subframe just a little bit and pushing into our windshield wiper bottle. And that's the leak that you're seeing here. So it's just really important. I think that the main factor here is to realize with more momentum, potentially, yes, there's more success to overcome an obstacle that you need to climb or go over, but also too much momentum can really lead to damage. It can lead to potentially rolling your vehicle depending on certain situations. All right, so let's show you now exactly how we handle obstacles, new obstacles, and show you kind of systematic approach to getting through an obstacle. So here we are again out at Roush Creek in Pennsylvania, and this is the obstacle known as Tip Top. So this is an obstacle that we had never been on before, had never seen a video of a WK2 doing it, and this is our first kind of run and approach to getting up this section. When we come to a significant new obstacle, we always walk it first, which we had already done. And then the very first thing I do is, especially if it's a rocky section like this, I'll stick it in rock mode, and I will just kind of crawl up best I can and kind of see how far we get.
Okay, let me go over across to you, okay?
When we do get hung up, then what we do is kind of walk around the rig and see where exactly we're getting hung up, make sure that there's not a big rock or something that's going to pop a tire or cause damage to the rig. And then once that's all clear, we kind of work from there. For this particular obstacle, we had the right line, and really all I needed was more momentum coming in. And once we gave it a little more momentum, we were able to climb the rest of this obstacle without difficulty.
There you go, that's steady throttle.
Alright, so coming up next here we have Fins and Things out in Moab. This is on kind of the back section of the trail. Out at Moab, if you've never been there, you've got this slick rock in a lot of places, which feels a lot like sandpaper, so you just really have some incredible grip. For this trail coming up here, it had rained earlier that day, so it was actually kind of wet out there. And as we're coming around, we kind of went through some mud, so we got tires that are kind of muddy and without tread. And when we first swung around and tried to climb this section, we actually weren't able to get up it. But again, I wanted to show you this approach because, again, you're going to see just kind of a nice slower, steady throttle initially just to kind of test out the obstacle. When it becomes apparent that we need more throttle, I just back it up, kind of weigh pros and cons of, further collateral damage to the rig, which in this case, it's nice, smooth, slick rock, so it was pretty low, and then we just gave it more throttle.
His rear passenger was spinning out.
So often, again, with a little more throttle, you're able to overcome those obstacles. This is Hell's Revenge out in Moab. And we're hitting a section where I knew it was going to be a challenging climb. Again, you're going to see me kind of ease up onto it, which is kind of a steady throttle to first see what and where and if we're going to be able to climb it.
A little bit passenger. There you go. A little more passenger. Okay, good. You're on that first lip. Keep that line. Okay, good. Come on up. Come on up. A bit turtle.
So this was an interesting obstacle. Obviously here I'm a little high-centered, or turtled as Steve says. So once you kind of you're sitting on your rock rails and your tires lose traction, you're kind of stuck at that point. So this was one we backed up and tried a couple times. What I want you guys to look at is, so I got that ledge I'm trying to climb now. If you look right in front of that, then there's another ledge, another rock to kind of handle. And so this is actually an obstacle that we tried a little bit kind of cautiously to bump over that first section, but we never really went at it full speed and really kind of gave it the sauce. And there were a couple reasons for that. One of them was that next ledge. I was worried we'd clear the first one and then slam into the ledge, the second ledge. And then the other thing was, at this point I'm missing some underbelly protection. I don't have my transmission plate. I don't have I don't even think I have the sump plate from Chief. I don't have my rear bumper guard and the corner guard, so I'm naked under my underbelly, and there's some pretty vital systems that I know at this point aren't covered. So I was willing to just kind of mess around a little bit, but ultimately decided that the amount of acceleration and momentum that I was going to need to carry through this obstacle, that there was a pretty high likelihood of collateral damage. And so we ended up not kind of forcing the issue on this obstacle.
That front tire's hanging before he...
Well,
All right, one more from Hell's Revenge out at Moab. Here's another climb that I'm trying to get up. I know for a fact if I can get my rear wheels to that slick rock that we're going to be okay to climb. What started to happen was I was just kind of digging my bumper in. Again, my bumper had already been torn off several times, so once it became apparent that I couldn't get my rear wheels to the wall, we ended up just taking another line. And sometimes that's what you need to do, is just look for another way up. Say you gave it another go and then just realize that probably forcing the issue at that point might lead to further damage to your rig. All right, guys, so just to recap on what we've learned about momentum. First things, please know what to do in situations if you're going down an obstacle and you start to get really tippy. Know what to do and how to handle that. So hopefully we've covered that in this video. Also, with momentum, realize that if you're using more acceleration, more speed to get through an obstacle, that there's a higher risk of collateral damage to your rig. So just know that, and know whether or not you're willing to accept that risk, and whether or not your rig is protected well enough to take on that risk. Then lastly, hopefully we've been able to show exactly how we go about tackling new obstacles. Like I said, often we're doing obstacles first, we're leading a group, or we're out on a trail we've never been through, and so I've found that it's really helpful for us to first walk the lines, to pick the line we think is going to give us the most success, and then just to take it easy going through and get a sense for the obstacle. And then once I really realize and kind of evaluate how much throttle we're going to need to use, what potential risks to the rig there are, then we make the determination whether or not it's an obstacle that we want to try to climb and push past, or if just kind of the risk of collateral damage is too high and we want to look for another way around. And those are the obstacles that I think kind of get me a little bit, because I really like to be able to tackle challenges, but even I realize that there's situations where it's just not worth the risk. So guys, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new to this channel, consider hitting that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it, and we will see you guys again real soon.